Welcome, everyone, and good morning. This is Farm and Ranch Fridays. I'm your host, Lindsey Hollin, Farm and Ranch broker for eXp Realty, based in the heart of the Texas Hill Country. I have an amazing guest and a dear friend that I've been working with for a very long time. If you are not a full-time Farm and Ranch sales agent, then you probably don't know the remarkable Aaron Yates. Aaron actually, in my mind, founded the premier ranch marketing of photography and videography, of how we market, and it's really the baseline of how we do business and selling these massive ranches. There's so much to include. This is not a house in the country club where you take a picture of every room, bathroom, and living room and kitchen and call it a day. We're doing drone work. We were just talking about VR and some of the heavy technology that's now coming out. Very excited to introduce the one and only Mr. Aaron Yates. He is also the owner and founder of Kerrville Photo, and that has rooted him, especially being also in the heart of the Hill Country, where we have all these big, beautiful ranches and amazing topography and sunsets to encompass. So, Aaron, thank you so much for joining us and sharing these tips and tricks and best practices that I have come to learn and bring as a part of my selling portfolio.
Yeah, well, thanks for inviting me. I love talking shop, and you and I have known each other for a long time. So when I heard you were doing these videos, I was like, oh, great, this will be super fun. So I can talk about this stuff all day. So we'll have to squeeze it into an hour, right?
No, you're good. Actually, would you mind giving us a little background of how you got started?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a Kerrville native. I live here in Kerrville and am based here. Grew up here in Kerrville. Growing up, I was just a hobbyist photographer and videographer. I followed my grandfather around, honestly, and just taking pictures and helping out with video at the church and stuff like that. And I was in land surveying. So my grandfather founded a land surveying company in Kerrville in the 70s. And so throughout high school and college, I was working with the land surveying company. And so I was exposed to all these ranch brokers and real estate developers and people like that. We did mostly rural ranch development, subdivision, large ranch sales and stuff. And so some of these brokers, kind of almost by happenstance or by accident, were like, hey, I heard you do some pictures. I heard you take pictures and make videos. And I said, yeah. And they said, well, we need some pictures for our new website, because this was like 2010 and not even everybody had websites yet. So they were like, our web person says we need some pictures. Can you do that for us? And it kind of took off from there. I wanted to start a business. I'm kind of an entrepreneur by heart. So I was working in the land surveying company, but knowing I wanted to work for myself. And it was like this opportunity presented itself. It was like, oh, okay, well, there's enough work to make it full time in photo and video if I can do something like real estate, specifically ranch real estate, with all these connections to different brokers that I already had. So that's kind of how it started in 2010. And it just kind of took off from there. I never dreamed that it would be kind of like such a big part of my business. I thought I would be spread out and doing all kinds of other traditional photography and video. And I still do, but probably 80 or 90% of my business is specifically in the ranch real estate market these days. So in my like 13th year of shooting ranches, and I get to the coolest thing about the job, and you probably would agree too on y'all's end, is that the travel and the things that you get to see in this business are just amazing. I've seen every corner of the state of Texas, worked in probably like 100 different counties in Texas at least. I've worked in New Mexico, I've worked in Colorado, I've worked in Oregon. So you just get to see all this cool stuff that you never otherwise would get to see. And it's a lot of fun. Every day is different. You never know what the day is going to bring. You get to be outdoors, seeing wildlife and interacting with really cool people, whether it's the sellers or the brokers or the agents. So it's really just, it's a cool job.
So with that, seeing really cool things, you and I got to list a very, very special ranch. And this ranch had some interesting exotic animals, actually 2 tigers. I want to ask you, have you ever seen anything cooler than that?
Those were the first tigers I'd ever seen on a ranch. So that, I remember when you said that, I was like, oh, I know what ranch she's talking about. So that was super cool. Never have seen any kind of tigers or lions or anything like that on a ranch. We've seen monkeys. There was a ranch I shot that had an island that was for monkeys only. And so they like rowed a boat across to feed the monkeys every day. That was cool. We see kangaroos, we see giraffes, every kind of African species you can imagine. So that stuff is like super special. Anytime there's a ranch where they're like, oh, we have some exotics. I'm like, oh, what kind? Like, can we spend 2 hours just shooting exotics?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was probably my favorite moment as well. So yeah, we see a lot of different things and have to capture very interesting moments, and sometimes those can be challenging. Also, it's challenging to set your clients up for prepping for this massive production, and this is really what this podcast is teaching us today, is really setting the expectation, because we can spend thousands, actually we spend thousands of dollars. I crunched the numbers on a premier ranch, which is a large working ranch, with a lodge, with wildlife. You're looking at 1,000+ acres. You could spend an upward of $15,000 on marketing. So it's really important to prep your clients to say, listen, our photo shoot is going to be this date, and here is the list of things we need to do. And when you start listing that out, it can definitely be overwhelming. But I'm really excited, y'all. Aaron has put this presentation together to walk you through the items that you need to be prepared for and what to look for. Because a part of your presentation of letting these clients know that you are the best for the job is also being knowledgeable enough to bring this information to light. So I'm very excited today that Aaron's going to go through some of his tips and tricks, and just, this is how you do it, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, this is it. Like, this is the script. I'm so excited that he's here to share this.
Well, thank you. Well, stop me if you have any questions, because I'm kind of putting this together based on what most of my clients ask me, especially when I have a new client. But if there's something to elaborate on, please definitely stop me and tell me some questions that you might have.
You know me, I'm a big mouth. I jump in.
Good, absolutely, yeah. This is supposed to be two-way, not one-way. So,
absolutely.
About me, we've already talked about that. I'm a Kerrville guy, Kerrville native. I've worked in the Hill Country, but across the state and everywhere else. I was trying to look up how many properties I've shot, just to try to, because I was curious too, and so it's somewhere around 4,000 or so. That's inclusive of residential, everything, all up to premier ranches, of course. But we up until 2020, we were doing about 400 properties a year. Since 2020, things have changed a little bit, and we can talk about that if we want to. But we're doing now about roughly 200 to 300 different properties per year. So that's kind of the experience that I have, that I get to see, 300 super cool properties every year. So that's fun. What I'd like to tell clients is always start with why. I think, like the famous book says, is like, figure out why you're trying to do these different things. And for us, like, the main things, of course, are your social media presence is huge these days. You've got to have good stuff to be able to put out on social media. The clients expect it, the sellers expect it. Trying to get leads, of course, they're not always great leads probably from social media, but you guys know more about that than I do. But just kind of that personal branding below that kind of goes along with the social media stuff. It's like, the more that you can show potential clients kind of the quality of marketing material that you're putting out there and that you're willing to invest in, then the better that makes you look as an agent or as a broker.
So Aaron, we call that milking the listing. So using that listing to get more clients. So absolutely. And that's something that sometimes you get so laser focused on this one listing that you forget that this is marketing that you can use moving forward. So awesome. Thank you for bringing that up, because some of us get we're so busy trying to get this on the market and sold, we forget about those additional opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. I have some clients that have specifically told me, like, we're shooting for the next listing. Like, we want to sell this one, but we're shooting and presenting this in a certain way so that we can get that next big seller to say, gosh, this person, John Doe, man, he did a great job marketing that property. I want to use him because he was just a go-getter and he did it right. So we have a lot of people tell us that. A lot of people tell us that about the covers of the magazines that we shoot for. They'll say, the magazine is not necessarily a selling tool, but it's a listing tool. And so, all these different things are really to gather those clients potentially to get the next big and best listing and stuff like that, in addition to selling the one that you've got. So like this picture here, this is when the Wild Ranch headquarters was for sale. they're like, we need like a super captivating image for the front cover that can grab people's attention and stuff like that. And then, also present to the next big ranch seller, like, oh gosh, those guys did this big historic property and look at the great job that they did on that with marketing. So let's talk to them before we get ready to list the property the next time. So those are all important things. Of course, digital curb appeal goes with that too. We don't have specific stats necessarily for ranch real estate, at least I don't. But basically every single home buyer is looking online first to figure out, narrow down their search criteria and stuff like that, and look at the pictures to see what properties they're interested in seeing in person. So all of these things kind of like have to be happening at the same time. Like you said, milking that listing for not only selling the one you've got, but also getting that next listing and stuff is super important. And then people ask me, well, what should we do? I've got this super cool listing or whatever it is. Like, should we do photos? Should we do video? Should we do virtual tours? Should we do all these different things? And my advice is like, especially if you're starting out, maybe for people that may be watching this and getting into the ranch business, is don't necessarily throw everything in the kitchen sink at every listing. You've got to be smart with your marketing dollars. You can look at the statistics about what actually works and what's the best bang for your buck. And, a lot of clients just start with only photography for their first listings, or for smaller listings that aren't, multi-million dollars. Maybe photography is all they need or all that they have budgeted for that particular listing. So, it says 84% of buyers use listing photos. I'm like, who are the other 16% that don't find listing photos useful? That seems silly to me. I think it's everybody is looking at listing photos in one way or another, whether it's on a realtor.com type site or the agent's individual websites or Lands of Texas or Farm and Ranch or wherever. Listing photos are kind of like the baseline. You get those right, and then you can build on top of that and add anything else that you want to, that you think will be useful for that listing.
Absolutely. Now video tours, man. So and you see these examples of, these beautiful ranches he's like putting up here. Sometimes a majority of our sellers come from out of state or even out of the country. So these valuable, beautiful video tours, if you have the ability or you do have that, it goes back to representation and representing the client to the best of your ability. These larger ranches do need video tours. Like there's no question about that. So I always tell agents, listen, if this is too big for you financially, partner with someone who can help you, because that goes back to our track guidelines of everybody wants to take a listing and make money and big commission, but also too, do you have the ability to service that client? And on these large ranches, you have to have you have to have drone video, you have to have inside video, and all the things we were talking about. So awesome that you brought that up, especially since residential agents that are listening that want to cross over, showing them that, listen, this is a major step and your marketing has to level up too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And going along with that, in this slide here, it's amazing to me that only like a fourth of real estate professionals even use YouTube as part of their regular marketing routine and stuff. And YouTube, a lot of people don't know, is the second largest search engine in the world. So people have spent all this time and energy on Google, like ranking highly on Google and getting Google ads and stuff like that to make sure that they're out there. And then they're not spending any time on the second biggest search engine in the world, which is YouTube. A lot of agents use Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and stuff like that, kind of in descending order. But YouTube is probably one of the most underutilized assets that's out there. It's free. It has, billions of people are using YouTube every single day. And it's a good way it's the best way to host those video tours that you're talking about. So, video is one of those things that has evolved a lot over the years. So when I started in 2010, the technology was not anywhere near where it is today. I mean, YouTube didn't even start till 2005, I think. And so we were spending a great deal of time. Some ranches, we would spend 3 or 4 days trying to capture enough footage to be able to make it into a useful video. These days, we can do everything a lot quicker. Drones finally kind of became legal to use around 2016 or so. So like everything, the game has completely changed, but the need for video and stuff is still there. We used to do what we called listing replacement video tours, and we still do sometimes for certain clients, where it was a long form video that covered every single thing that ranch or that property had to offer. And sometimes they were 8 minutes long, 10 minutes long. And brokers were using those to kind of like pre-qualify a buyer that they were really, really interested in that ranch before they drove 8 hours to go show it or something like that. These days, the trend is more like videos anywhere from 30 seconds to 3 minutes long that just kind of hit the highlights and grab people's attention, because nobody has a very long attention span anymore. So, and then sometimes, like we'll talk about here, sometimes there's not just one deliverable. You know, we'll make different versions of a video tour for different platforms. And I think I have a slide about that in a minute of a good way to kind of like make the most of your money. But you know, these other things that you can do are how kind of help your listing even just stand out a little bit more and just grab a few more eyeballs. Preparing though, that was the big thing that you were talking about today. So I kind of feel guilty sometimes with some of our clients, especially like on a big ranch that has a lot of preparation that goes into the shoot, because they'll spend, like you said, weeks or sometimes months kind of like getting to this point where they're ready to list and ready to shoot. And then we're there for like one day or whatever. And they're like, oh my gosh, I worked for 3 weeks straight and this guy's in and out in 8 hours or 6 hours or whatever.
Man, but you and I know that extra time, because people don't understand, like it shows up in photos. Like, I mean, the eyesores show up. So it's, and plus, like, you only have so much time to cover. I mean, covering 1,000 acres or more, and we've done more. Yeah, you have done more. You've done, I think, what's your largest? 10,000?
I mean, if you count the ones in Oregon, I mean, they were 50 or 60,000 acre properties total with leased land and stuff. So it's big jobs a lot of times.
Yeah, so you need to be in and out. You need to be efficient, and so having that ability, you know, and having everything ready. And I've even had a nightmare listing where it was supposed to be done. Do you remember that listing with all the tape on the wall?
Oh yeah, we've all had those kinds of listings for
And
sure.
then,
Yeah.
so, you know, I tell people it's you know, we have one day. You have a tight schedule, and then if we get rain, if you know, if anything happens, it's like we want to get this on the market, because when it gets on the market, then we can start selling it. So absolutely, this prep is super important. And I've had clients take up to 2 months to do this list correctly. So I'm really excited you're sharing this. I'm actually gonna blow it up a little larger for our individuals here so they can see it, and take it away, man. This is the nugget of knowledge that I'm happy you're sharing.
Yeah, and I have a flyer too that goes into a little bit more detail and stuff, about the preparation. I think there's another slide here in a second, but the main thing is like, uh, just people are always like, oh, you can Photoshop this out, or can we move this when you come, or can I move the tractor or something like that. And like you said, it's a tight schedule, and also like the way that we have to shoot stuff, especially if we're doing photo and video, and maybe we're doing drone, and we're doing all these different types of things. You can't move it and move it and move it and move it, you know, every single time we're going to come back to that location to shoot. So it's like, get it like the way that it's ready to be seen, you know, as if you're going to show it or something like that. Not just like, oh, we can move this box from room to room, or oh, we can just, you know, keep moving this tractor out of the way. It's like, spend a little bit more time maybe, and it'll make for a more efficient shoot. Getting into that as you prepare for the shoot, I'll just tell you that these are the 3 biggest mistakes that we see people make when it comes to listing and shoot days. And the number one is smothering the photographer, or being like a helicopter seller. So a lot of times we go on ranch shoots, especially with clients that we've been with for a long time and we know what they want. And all they do is give us like a hidden key to the house or whatever, and a gate code and a map, and they say go edit, and we don't see anybody at all for the whole day. And those are some of the best shoots we've ever done, because there's no distractions, there's nobody there kind of like getting in the way, or there's no parked cars that need to be moved out of the way and stuff like that. And we're kind of just left to our own devices to just figure out the most creative way to shoot stuff, figure out the best time to shoot different things, move back and forth on the ranch without, you know, having to get clearance or tell anybody what we're up to. And those work great. It's not always possible. Obviously, sometimes the sellers live there, or they just insist on being present. But I tell my clients that if there's any way that the seller cannot be there, we'll have a lot more efficient shoot and probably get a lot more good stuff done. The second thing is, and I hate to take away from anybody who's preparing their improvements for the shoot, because that's super important, but people sometimes spend too much time on improvements, especially these multi-million-dollar ranches, these premier ranches. Sometimes the selling point may be the land or the river or the water or the wildlife or whatever it is. And they'll kind of expect us to spend like 4 hours shooting like the little hunter's cabin, and it's like, no, the value at this ranch is somewhere else. Like, let's spend your money more wisely and go and shoot the super pretty stuff and shoot the animals and shoot all this other stuff that's really going to help you sell the ranch. The house may be a teardown, or it may be a guest house while they build their big house or something like that. But sellers especially will kind of lean into agents to like force them to spend what I consider to be way too much time on improvements that don't really necessitate it. So it's a fine line to walk. We have to keep our sellers happy, of course. And then the third mistake is spending all the money for just one primary deliverable. We have a lot of people that call us and say, oh, I only need aerial photos, or I only need a drone video, or I only need still photography. And it's like, especially if it's a big property that's going to take us several hours to do it, no matter what type of deliverable we're making, it's like, just spend slightly more money maybe to get a video, even if it's not a super produced long video. It's like, just capture some footage and you can use it in your Instagram reel or something like that. If you're going to invest, if you're going to have us there anyway, we can do a whole lot of different things while we're there without increasing the cost a whole lot. So those are the three things that, as I'm preparing people for these shoot days, it's like, here's the things that can cause it to go wrong, or here's the things that we sometimes miss or forget about. And so don't make some of these mistakes if you can avoid them. And then, of course, preparing. I have to badger some of my clients sometimes to give me as much information about the property as I can get before I get there, because the more time that I've had to like sit and look at a map or a MapRight link or a KML or something like that, any kind of map that kind of shows me the boundary of the property and gives me an idea of what the roads look like, how much time it might take me to get around, what are some of the high points, like literally and figuratively, like where are good views, what kind of improvements are on the ranch, what is the kind of the quality of those improvements. All those different things are like so important to help us decide, for one, like how many hours are we going to need to spend here. If we don't know about a new house that's been built that maybe doesn't show up on Google Maps or something like that, and it's a big part of the shoot, we may not set aside enough hours to be able to get the job done. Also, with planning comes to talk about what's most important, like what's going to sell this property in your eyes as the broker. Is it the water? Is it the views? Is it the land, the wildlife? Is it the house? All those things are going to kind of help us decide where we should spend our time and what we can tell you to do to prepare to make sure that it goes as well as it can. For the sellers, primarily, is decluttering. Like, if there's one word to describe how to prepare a property, whether it's a house or a ranch, it's just declutter. Get rid of extra stuff. Things, it looks bad, of course, on the inside of a house. We all know when there's too much stuff, you can kind of go too far in the other direction and have not enough stuff. Like, this was actually a new construction shoot that's on this slide that no one had moved in yet. So it almost looks like too bare. So you don't want to like just remove everything and make it look like it's an unfurnished Airbnb or something like that. But
maybe
you can get rid of personal stuff.
Maybe a set of knives in the corner and a plant over on the left hand. Yeah.
I was like, those shelves just need a plant, a succulent or something. But it's like, it brings the focus onto the property or onto the improvement, instead of like looking on there like, oh, like we're on Zillow Gone Wild on Instagram or something, like trying to figure out like what kind of furniture these people had in their house or whatever. It's just, let's draw the attention and draw the focus to the shoot, to the improvement, or to the land, rather than to like if the dog is in the corner, or what kind of stuff they left on their bathroom counter and stuff like that. But declutter, as Lindsay was mentioning, goes to the outside too. Like, if you've got a bunch of junk that's sitting around in front of a house, or and here's the old car that someday you plan to fix up and it's sitting in the barn and taking up space, and like, the more you can do to present the property well, like the more money that you might eventually get for that sale. If you've got $1 million listing, you have to make it look like $1 million. So that goes for inside and outside things, like trimming, weed eating, straightening up the front gate, changing the light bulbs and stuff, making sure the uplighting on the house works, or the exterior landscape lighting and stuff like that. All of those things kind of come into play. And I've got a big long flyer, Lindsay, that I can send you if you'd like to to link to it or something on this video or send it to your viewers that goes into a
Absolutely.
lot more detail.
I was about to say you have a remarkable checklist for farm and ranch listings that include, and this is where we joke about maybe taking 2 months, because they may have to shred a field. They need to take in and wrap up all the garden hoses. They need, the gate. The gates, everybody talks about curb appeal. Well, in a ranch, it's your gate. So, just making sure that, if you have a gate, if it needs to be repainted, like some of these massive gates with, they have landscaping, it needs to look good, because that is the first thing they see. And it implies, as you know, it implies so many things. If it looks neat and tidy and taken care of, then it implies that the ranch has been taken care of. But if it looks like, trash, and there's weeds and the plants are dying, it looks like an afterthought. So absolutely, we'll definitely put in the description of this podcast, we will definitely have all your information, as well as that valuable link. Thank you so much. I was going to ask, I was like, I need to share that because I use that tool in all my listing presentations.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny. You can tell so much about a property when you pull up to the gate. And like one of the biggest ones for me, at least as somebody who goes to a lot of ranches, is if you pull up and there's an electric gate and then it doesn't work, it's like, is that setting the tone for how everything else has been maintained within this ranch? So little things like that, I think are super important. The other thing when we're preparing and we're planning a shoot, we talk about action in the videos and like what kind of things can we show or do in a video to make it stand out or be more demonstrative, instead of just like, here's another pan shot of this field and here's a pan shot of the view and here's a pan shot of the house. It's like if this ranch, especially if it's like a recreational ranch where there's a shooting range or a skeet range or something like that, or there's a fishing pond, well, like, can we show people that are actually using the ranch as intended? And does that help add value and stuff like that to the shoot? So we have a lot of agents. I think we've had Lindsay pull up her shotgun and stuff before and do some skeet shooting, or we'll have an agent, going fishing, or even just like riding in the Polaris or carrying a rifle into a hunting blind, or just little things like that, like make the video more appealing and kind of hold people's attention a little bit longer, rather than, oh, here's just another real estate video of showing an empty house and an empty property. So
absolutely. And visiting your YouTube channel, you'll see that, because I remember the ranch with the tigers we were talking about. I'm pretty sure that we were fake shooting on the range. We went fishing. We were playing pool. It had a really massive bar. I want to say, like, we did everything we could on that ranch we possibly could film.
Heck yeah. Yeah. It's terrible to have to pour a drink too in a bar, but you got to do it for the shoot, from that every now and then. But yeah, the more stuff like that you can include, I think the better. I mean, people like watching videos that have people in them. And so if you can stage that, and it's not appropriate for every listing, but for the bigger premier listings, I think it's worth the time. Just to give you an idea of, so then what you should expect as far as deliverables afterwards, at least from us. And I think if you're shopping for a real estate photo video person, these are some of the things you should expect from them. Of course, edited photos. So we never deliver a photo that hasn't been touched. So a lot of times people will ask us if they can have the raw images or the raw footage or something. And the answer from me is always no, because we shoot with our edits in mind. And so we want to be able to give you ready to use images that look good as intended as we shot them. So every single photo, sometimes we'll deliver, I just delivered a ranch the other day that had 350 deliverable photos with it. And we touched and spent time on every single one before we gave it. Vertical and horizontal orientation. So not only like for your magazine covers and stuff like that, but even for some of the inside ads or for your own brochures or your own social media pages, you need to have some of each. And high resolution and low resolution, everybody needs high resolution. They sometimes forget to download them when we send them over, but eventually you might have a flyer or a magazine ad or something like that, and you need those high resolution images. And a lot of times that stuff's on a deadline. And so we tell people, please download those, because we might be gone for 2 weeks on a ranch shoot and you're like, oh, the magazine needs high res and I don't have them. And we don't want to be the reason that you miss your deadline for an ad or something like that. But the low resolution is for your online sharing. So you can, images that are small enough where you can text them, you can email them, you can easily add them to social media pages and stuff like that. Because those high res versions, like nowadays cameras are so high res, that like one single JPEG image that we send you in high res is going to be like 40 or 50 megabytes. So there's no chance that you're going to be able to easily upload that or email that or anything else. Then on the video side, if we're doing video, the most common deliverable is kind of what we call long form edited video with music, sometimes narration. And long form has evolved. Like we said, we used to do 8-10 minute videos sometimes. Nowadays, a long video is like 3 minutes for the most part. So that is a video. Typically what we'll do is deliver a YouTube link. So we'll put it on our page, and then we send you a video file so that you can upload it to your own pages too. And then more commonly lately, and I encourage this for agents, is to get a few different other videos that you can use for Reels or for TikTok or for other like short form applications like YouTube Shorts or Facebook Reels and stuff like that. And these are not super hard for us to produce, and it doesn't take a whole lot of extra time. But if we get it to you, then you can kind of like extend the life of that listing and extend the life of like the media that we've given you. Instead of just reposting the same video again in 6 months, if heaven forbid it's still on the market, you kind of have some little reels and cool stuff to kind of build interest along the way. So evergreen, promote the listing, promote the brand. The evergreen stuff too is like, if you have a super cool listing, you might be able to repurpose some of that stuff for just generic purposes in the future, not tied to that listing. Like that listing may have already sold, but if you have this really cool shot of Lindsay like in a Polaris or something, like climbing this big hill, like she can use that later to promote her own personal brand. So I have some samples, so you can link these later if you want, Lindsay, or we can play some of them now if you want. But it's just kind of showing a couple of the different styles of video that can be done and adding some of these like action or interest items and stuff in here. We can come back to these at the end if you like and watch these, or I can send you the links or whatever. But
absolutely. And with this, we can also share, if you don't mind, if you're okay with it, we share the presentation as well. Because that way these agents that are listening at any time, even if it's after the fact of our live, they can take and watch this and really study them. So if you're cool with that, I'd love to share the link of your slide presentation.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, these are all public facing videos, so there's no secret pocket listings here or anything like that. So, most of them have probably already been sold. But this was somebody who appeared in the video for us feeding the giraffe or whatever. It's like that was an eye-catching real estate image on a video for YouTube, like a YouTube thumbnail, compared to like just another ranch or whatever. So this one got a lot of views, probably because of that. This is another listing that we did in Hunt, and we were planning on doing like a full narrated video for this one because there were a lot of improvements and a lot of interesting stuff here. But it was an example of one where we kind of presented it to the client just with some cool dramatic music and dramatic video and everything like that. And the client just loved it, like just the way that it was. So we ended up not adding narration. So like not every listing needs the same video treatment every single time. With this one, even though it was highly improved, they were like, let's just let the beauty of this ranch kind of speak for itself. And I think that worked really, really well in this video. So.
A question with that. I've been noticing, especially since people are watching videos without sound, do you find that actually it should, maybe lean more towards not having narrations in a video or in the shorts? What's your opinion on that so far with this type of market?
Yeah, I think it depends on the platform. So, and I think that's why every deliverable is not the same. So like with YouTube, the stats show that people listen with sound on much more often than they do on the other platforms, like your Instagram Reels and TikTok and stuff like that. A lot of people are watching those with no sound. And so that's where a lot of the annotations or other different like eye-catching graphics and stuff can come in to be able to explain what people are seeing without having a narration or a sound have to explain it. So for me, like if I was making an Instagram Reel for this one, I would probably be putting stuff like 5,000 square foot lodge or whatever, 1,600 feet of Guadalupe River frontage, like whatever those kind of stats are, I'd probably be plugging those in for things like Instagram Reels and TikTok, and maybe or maybe not for YouTube, depending on kind of what I want the look and feel of the video to be like. With this one, this particular client was kind of like, we don't really want it to look busy. We want it to seem like peaceful and like relaxing and like, here's a cool place that you can go and kind of get away from all that busyness and all the talking and everything. So everybody kind of makes a choice on how they want their video to look and feel based on that specific listing. But you get the idea. Beautiful, beautiful property here. We'll talk about drones in a second, but this particular shot, these kinds of shots, they call them FPV drones, and they're kind of a newer technology, at least in the real estate market, where it feels more like you're a bird and you can go faster, and the drone kind of turns as it turns and stuff. So it's not as highly polished as like the big fancy cinema drones. It's more like real and kind of like bird's eye view, and it can fly through stuff, and some people fly through houses with it, etc. These are like super good for your Instagram reels and your TikTok reels and stuff like that. We did one TikTok video just as an experiment and just put nothing but FPV drone footage in there, and it got like 10,000 views in the first week, which is much more than most of the real estate videos will get in the first week. So lots of different ways to do it. And then, like I said, if we're out there, we might as well go ahead and capture it and kind of see what happens. And it can be an ongoing experiment to see what your viewers want to see and what they like and what they expect. Of course, everybody wants to know how much it costs for all this stuff. And it's so hard to say like a blanket statement to say this is how much a ranch shoot costs, because there's so many variables. And the biggest two, though, are just the shoot time and the travel. Like how much stuff is there on this property? How big is it? How many improvements are there? Those kinds of things help us inform the shoot time that we need. Travel, of course, we work everywhere, so travel is always an expense when it's outside of Kerr County for us. Then edit time, we're going to spend a certain amount of time shooting. We can calculate that. Then editing is going to be different for every client based on what they want. So if we're making just one long format video, that's one thing. If we're adding a few reels and stuff like that, it may add a little bit of cost. The more photos that we get, the more time we spend shooting, the more time we're gonna have to spend editing, just because we've captured more and it has to be kind of sorted and processed and exported and all that. Sometimes there's a few extra costs for different things. We do have different sites we use for music licensing. We have a voiceover artist that we pass on all these at our cost. Animations. So a lot of times people, for commercial properties, I would say more often than anything else, is they need kind of a really extensive animation showing different things that are in the area, like other businesses or highways and traffic counts and zoning and floodplain and everything else. And all that stuff can kind of be shown in a video animation, but it just takes a little extra time to do. And then if we are using people in the video that is not you, it's not the agent or the broker, we want to make sure that we get model releases for those. And when we're bringing in actors and actresses, or if we are, we need to have a model release in place for them. And we're going to have to pay them for their time. So with all that said, it's highly variable. Most ranch shoots that we do today with photo and video, basic deliverables are anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000. Some are less when it's just photography and it's nearby and it's quick and easy. And then some are more. We still, even though it's not as often anymore, there are times when we've spent 3 or 4 days on a single ranch shoot, and the cost just was pretty high for those. But certain special properties need kind of extra time and extra effort. And then a few other considerations, questions that come up all the time. For one, the kind of on the personal branding side, should I be in my photos or videos? And that's a question for each person. There's not a whole lot of ranch brokers that I work for that feel super comfortable being like the beginning of the video and being like, oh, here I am at this ranch and I'm going to show you around or whatever. They don't usually want to do that. But they can sometimes appear, driving a mule or going fishing and stuff like that. But what I tell folks a lot of times is like, hey, we're going to be there with all of our photography equipment anyway, and we're on this beautiful property. Maybe wear a nice shirt and let's get you a new headshot, at this view or at the river or whatever it is. So we had one client that he would wear one nice shirt for every single shoot, and we would do a dozen or so shoots for this guy every year. And he would make sure that at the beginning he looked nice and was not sweaty yet or anything from driving around, and we'd get him a new headshot. And he wouldn't use every single one, but if he had one that turned out pretty good that he liked, he had like a new profile picture every month or whatever for social media. And I thought that was a fabulous idea. Should we do sunset? Should we do twilight? To me, for the premier ranches, it's kind of a requirement. You want that dramatic look. You want your images to stand out. It can be a little harder to plan, a little bit harder to predict. I kind of needed to do an experiment. So we do a lot of construction time lapse and construction updates and stuff like that too for different clients. And so sometimes we leave time lapse cameras up on a telephone pole or something for, months or in some cases years at a time. And so one of them in Kerrville, there was a new school being built and it was going to be about 18 months long. So we had this camera up on a pole and we had it shooting from sunrise to sunset every single day. So I used that as kind of like my data set and said, of all that time that we're spending there taking photos at sunset, how many of them are actually what I would consider to be good sunsets, like pretty sunsets? And it turned out it was about one about every 2 weeks. So the majority of the time, you're not going to have a super fantastic sunset, but those times that you're lucky enough when you get one, it's like, man, you can't buy a better look for a listing whenever it's just gorgeous, Texas sunset with colors and clouds and all that kind of good stuff. So to me, for those premier ranches, we almost always try for a sunset. We don't always get a fantastic sunset, but we always try. And then weather is the bane of our existence, especially during busy times of year, like right now in the spring when everybody needs to get their ranch shot while it's green and, before it dries out in the summer. It happens to be the greenest time of year, but it's also the wettest time of year. We hope, we want rain. We need rain right now. So you have to be flexible when it comes to weather. To me, if I was a broker, I would not want to spend thousands of dollars and shoot on an overcast day and get mediocre pictures. So we have to kind of weigh that against what are your deadlines? Like, is the seller pushing you to get it listed immediately, or can it wait a week until we get better weather? Those are things that we kind of have that conversation. And I can tell you, okay, it's cloudy today, it's rainy today. If we push, here's the next date we can get for you. It's maybe working on a weekend or something like that. How much preparation has gone into getting it ready for that particular day. There's so many variables, but to me, I'm not spending all of my marketing budget and getting crappy pictures. That's just not something that I want to do. Drones, of course, I don't lead with drones because some people think that all we do all day long is fly the drone. I wish that were the case because that's the most fun part, is flying the drone around. But some people rely too much on drones. It shouldn't be all drone footage or all drone pictures. It does add value. I'm not going to lie. The drones have totally revolutionized the real estate photo and video industry since about 2015 or 16. We're going to get aerial footage and aerial photos of almost every ranch listing without exception. But it's not going to be all we do. So like at the ranch, I mentioned the other day that we delivered 300 or so pictures. Only about 50 of them were aerial photos. The rest were ground level photos and ground level shots. So they add value. There's time and place to use the drone, and there's specific reasons to use it or not use it at different places on the ranch or different parts of the ranch. The other thing I'll say about drones, because this could be a whole long presentation by itself probably, is that not all drones or drone operators are created equal. And so a lot of times when we are getting out our drone, like Lindsey can attest to this probably, like the seller is there and it's like, okay, it's time to fly the drone for the first time. And we pull out like our ginormous suitcase size drone and get it out. And they're like, oh, wow, we thought you were just going to have like the little drone like we have, my nephew has or whatever. It's like, no, we spend a lot of time and money on the drones and getting specific ones and a certain caliber of drone because it makes a difference. And you want to make sure especially if you're hiring kind of a newish real estate photographer, make sure that they are FAA certificated, basically licensed by the FAA, because the fines go not only to the pilot, but also to the person who's using the photos that were not shot by a licensed operator. So the last fine I saw was somewhere in Chicago where the drone pilot and the realtor both got fined about $10,000 for not having licensed imagery. So it's not a negligible fine. We could talk about drones all day. The different types of drones. There's your standard cinematic style footage that everybody's used to seeing, where it's glass smooth and silky and looks great. Nowadays, the FPV drones, which stands for first person view, are more and more popular. And they're the kind of drones that you see people flying them through houses and doing like super fast flybys and where it kind of turns as if you're kind of a bird in the sky. So really cool, still kind of new. So trying to figure out where FPV drones fit into this whole market, but definitely an exciting time with all the new technology in the drone world and in the standard photo and video world. There's lots of cool stuff out there. That's about it from me, Lindsay, on this slideshow, but I'm happy to answer any questions or go back and talk about anything else that you think is important to hit on.
Really setting that level of expectation with the clients on that checklist, which we're going to provide to you, because, let's face it, they think the home they live in every day is beautiful. They don't see, the trash cans out front that are going to show up in a photo. They don't see that unwrapped, garden hose. They don't see the eyesores like we see them, fresh eyes coming in. And, that delicate balance of, nobody wants to hear their baby's ugly. So, finding a way to use that checklist, especially, gates, I think are pretty much the number one because they're such an afterthought, but really that's your curb appear. That's your, like you said, that's the first thing. And not just making it look good, that also rolls you into the functionality. Hey, does your gate work? That's something before showing we probably need to get repaired. And it's kind of like prepping for photography gets you ready for that perfect first showing. And honestly, it's really great too, because that helps you as an agent and as a broker to have it ready. So it's like, okay, we're going to put it on the market right after we get these photos back, which can be, 4 days to a few weeks, depending on obviously what you have had to do to prepare that. But, that's when people are going to get in. So the house is still going to be clean. Everything's probably still going to be in order. And that really helps you put your best foot forward because it's got its Sunday best on. So I really don't have any questions, unfortunately, because I'm used to you. I think, highlighting how you use your relationship with your photographer to relay what needs to be done for you to have a successful listing and marketing campaign, and then to sell that property, and then to use that property to get more properties. So really you touched on more than I could ever imagine. I mean, Aaron, like I said, is my favorite. We have been together even before I started my real estate career. So it's interesting that it was awesome to see you grow into this amazing powerhouse in our industry. I'm so excited for you coming and sharing these nuggets of knowledge. So I appreciate your time. I look forward to having you back and maybe diving into some of the deeper details. I know you and I, before we got on here, talked about a lot of the technology changes and all the new opportunities with the technology that's come out, like you said, with that new drone footage, like a bird flying over and things like that. So really excited. Thank you so much, Aaron. I appreciate you. And I couldn't have asked for a better guest today.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Well, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm so happy that you invited me on. So look forward to doing it again someday.
Absolutely. We will have you back.